Hi, I'm Vincent. I'm a rising senior at Lynbrook High School, and my starting project was the RGB nightlight, and it uses a photoresistor to detect the surrounding brightness. And since it's a nightlight, it should only work when it's dark. So if it detects it's too bright, the light actually won't turn on. And you can also change the color of it with a dial. But my main project is the robotic hand, as you can see right here. It has two parts to it. It has the glove, and it has the hand itself. And the glove has these things on it called flex sensors, which are attached to it with a lot of electrical tape and not sewing. And the reason why this is nice is because since it's attached to the back, the flex sensors change their resistance output values based off of their bend radius. So what ends up happening is they send out those values, and it acts as a sort of virtual representation of how far the hand is bending, and then it'll send that information over to the hand itself wirelessly with these NRF24 wireless modules. And in the hand itself, there's a bay with 4 servos inside of it, and each of those servos is connected to one of these fingers. And each one of these fingers has 2 strings inside it. The one in the back controls how far upright it goes, and the one in the front controls how far down it flexes. Probably by far the biggest struggle I went through was definitely the assembly of the hand itself, because 3D printing is very, very imperfect, and when you try to make things precise with it, you run into a lot of problems. Each one of these holes where a servo was screwed in, those are supposed to be threaded when they get printed, but none of them came out threaded and all of them came out too small. So when I was screwing them in, I ended up having to use all of my non-existent arm muscle to try to get the screws to actually fit the servos in. And then in the end, for the last one, I actually just sort of used super glue. And then over here at the wrist joint, if you can see right here, there's actually a crack over there, because when it first came out of the printer, it actually came out broken. So then I glued it, and then when I was trying to put in the fingers, I forgot to screw in these parts, and then it broke again. So then I remember to screw these parts in. And then for the holes at the top of the fingers of the strings as they go through, this is probably the worst case of the 3D printing being a little bit finicky, is where, so inside the hole, they're supposed to be clear, right? So you can wrap the string through, except some of the holes end up being clogged by vestigial material of plastic. So I ended up having to jam a paper clip through it to try to clear out all the plastic. And even then, sometimes, it'd be pretty hard to fit the string through. And when you get it to try to connect up to these servos, because when you first put it in a glove, your hand's going to be relatively flat, right? The fingers, you're not going to have them bent. So you want the fingers on the hand itself to be bent in their default position. But in actuality, what happened was, you have to yank the string all the way down and make sure it's completely tight. But because it's braided string and not fishing line, like what was meant to be used, it'll actually stretch. And so over time, your fingers will end up slowly sagging. And that's where you can run into a lot of really, really big problems. But once I figured out a lot of these problems, and I figured out ways around them, for sometimes the fingers would get caught on themselves at the joints, so I went through a lot of sanding and filing to try to get the joints down. Sometimes I overfiled it, which is why this golden finger is actually stuck all the way back, because I filed the joint a bit too much, and now whenever it's at the fully upright position, it's actually a little bit past upright, which is a little disappointing. But also down over here, this servo had to be filed actually, because the strings are also getting caught on that. And the hand assembly was really hard, but also getting the wireless things to work initially was really difficult, because I wanted to try to test them to make sure I could get them to work and understand them. But in the process of trying to test them, I ran into a whole bunch of problems that in the end ended up just being a complete oversight for me, because I actually didn't have it wired correctly the entire time. And once I realized that worked, then testing the wireless modules became much easier. And then when I got it routed to the hand, and then I tried it out with my code, I ran into more problems where it would actually turn, when I bend the index finger, you see how the index finger turns right now, right? The code actually had it wrong, so when I bend the index finger, it would actually bend the pinky finger, and I bent the ring finger, bent the middle finger, and so all the fingers are wrong, and I had to go through and I had to change all of those back. But I think one thing I took from Bluestamp was that the instructors are very, very good about teaching you without teaching you, and so they sort of give you hints. Or my favorite was the Asher special, where he'd walk up to your desk and ask you 50 million questions until you wanted to collapse. But once you started answering them all, and if you couldn't answer one, he'd tell you to Google it. And once you Googled it, then you could figure it out, and you feel wow, I learned something new today, which is pretty nice. And I got that learning things on my own could be pretty interesting, and I could do interesting things like this. the reason why there's no thumb is because this, if you look over here, there's actually only space for 4 motors. And so one thing I was looking to do is like, maybe if there happens to be enough time, I could try to like attach another motor somewhere on the outside and get the thumb hooked up too. So that's why there's no thumb.
I noticed you had a little sticker on the back or something like
Oh,
that.
wait.
On the back of the robot.
What sticker? I don't know what you're talking about.
I was just curious what that was.
Oh, that's just related to a series of pranks that kids in our class have done each other after a group of college counselors came by for as guest speakers. They left behind like these little like sticker things, so we like some of us would slap them all over the room and I just stuck on the ground. So.
Instead of doing this, can you do like that? Like a rotation type of motion.
What do you mean by rotation?
It's like you curve.
Oh no, it can't curve because like it's screwed into the wrist. So like the wrist itself can't turn.
No, you don't turn the wrist, it's like a hand.
Yeah, so the fingers, you can have them do like alternating motions, but because it's wireless, it sometimes operates on a slight delay. So it won't, you can't really get an exact replica, but you can get it relatively close enough. Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Asher.
Where are you looking to take this project in the future?
Definitely just add a thumb. So yeah, well, the problem is that if I added a thumb, I have to redo another glove because I accidentally cut out the thumb. Any other questions? You.
Is there any reason why you put a gold finger?
Okay, so funny thing is, in case you didn't know, a bit of trivia about my instructor. Asher's last name is actually Goldfinger. So our 3D printer in our room used gold material. Once I saw that, I begged him to let me use a golden finger, so he printed one out for me. Any other questions?
Is it possible to like unscrew like the wrist and like put wires in it so it can like be more flexible?
Ooh, I think just unscrewing it probably wouldn't be enough. You'd have to like either add another part into the wrist that could connect to the palm, or you just have to like redesign an entire like arm segment entirely and just reprint it and see if that can work and if it can rotate. But that'd be pretty interesting. Like for a good bend as well.
Good job. Will the strength be, the finger be strong enough so that it can play piano?
It's plastic and it's bound by string.